Welcome back to the Daily Grind. I am Rob Lang, your host. I am doing this for Cutting Tool Engineering magazine, and today we are back in the Formula Garage. I don't know if you can guys see the frame behind me. They just chopped and re-welded the frame. So to the EV Club, nice work. I hope you guys get this thing done in time. So, being the Daily Grind, it is a double entente on two things: machining and coffee. And in our case, the coffee is by our new, or not new, but really, really good partner, Fresh Roasted Coffee out of Sunbury, PA. I have another cup of their Italian roast. It's fantastic. Link in the description. Check it out. Mm. So, on the other half of that, I know it's taken about 6 months for us to get to this point, but we have the other half of our double entente, grinding. And we have the unparalleled Dr. Jeffrey Badger, the grinding doc, on with us today to talk shop. So, Doc, thank you again for joining us. Let's make our first cut. So, what I like to do with all of my guests is have a brief backstory. Who are you? Past work experience. So, you are my first self-employed guest. So, I can't really ask you what you do for your company aside from yourself. But what I'd like to also share with the audience is, where did you land your PhD and how did you become such an expert in abrasives?
All right, very good. My name is Jeff Badger. I grew up in California, Utah, and Texas. I went to University of Texas at Austin for my undergrad. I did a master's at Penn State. And then I wanted to go out and travel the world. Didn't want to go get a real job. So I went and worked in Finland for a while, and that was kind of fun. Still didn't want to go out and get a real job, at least a career job. I wanted to see the world, but I didn't have any money. And if you want to see the world, you don't have any money, and the economy is a little bit rough, you apply to various PhD programs and say, hey, man, I want to do a PhD. But I didn't want to do it in southeastern Iowa or North Texas or southeastern Louisiana. I wanted to do it somewhere that was exotic, at least exotic to me at the time. And so I sent off letters to various universities around the world, Tokyo, Moscow, Argentina, wherever the hell. And one of the places that popped up was Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland. Because I sort of had a specialty in tribology. Tribology is not the study of tribes. It's the study of friction, wear, and lubrication. So I sent off letters to various universities who had departments in tribology. And one of them that responded was Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland. And they said, hey, man, we have a PhD program available. The subject is grinding. It's, we've got funding for a couple of years for grinding. And so if you want to come to Dublin and do grinding, submit your application. And I said, what the hell? I'm getting a lot of background noise here. And so I submitted my application and they accepted it. And I showed up and I go, what the hell is grinding? I don't know what grinding is, but it'll further my mechanical engineering education. And Dublin sounds like a fun place to be. So I showed up in Dublin and they said, yeah, the subject is grinding of metal. And so I worked in grinding, and that's how I gradually developed my expertise in grinding.
Wow. Now, is that the entirety of what led you down this career path? Or you said you did, was it your master's at Penn State?
Master's at Penn State and sort of a specialty in tribology. Tribology is study of friction and wear and lubrication.
Okay. I've only talked to you a few times, but that's quite the story traveling for your PhD. So, speaking of your professional certifications in grinding, I reached out to a former employer who does thermoform molds. I actually work for him. It's my father. I'll just say it out loud. It's my father. I worked for him when I was in high school and college, and he has adopted your method, and you had released a short video on this, your method on using the entirety or just about the entire width of your grinding wheel when you're cutting something or grinding something. You had said that you don't find that it brings any more heat or chatter. So, can you walk us through that and how you came across that
Sure.
summation?
A bunch of grinding operations have something called cross feed or step over, or it goes by different names. And basically, let's do surface grinding. Here's a grinding wheel. Here's a
Yep.
workpiece. Just happen to have this pad of paper. And what you do is you're going to grind a plate on a surface grinder, good old fashioned stuff. And it's basically how far over do you move in every increment? Should you move over, if this wheel's about 1 inch, should you move over half an inch, a quarter inch, an eighth of an inch, a 16th of an inch? How far over should you move? Or the same thing with cylindrical grinding. As you traverse the workpiece, I like sound effects. I do a lot of sound effects in my grinding education. It just amuses me. So here we go.
We'll talk about that later.
So every time the workpiece makes one revolution, how far over should you move? Should you order a quarter inch, 2 millimeters, half the wheel, the whole wheel? And my view is you should move over almost the entire wheel. Now, maybe not the entire wheel because you're going to have a little rounding here on the edges and stuff,
Sure.
but almost the entire wheel. And the reason is because, and I get into it when I give my classes, the reason is because, you bought a 1 inch wheel. You didn't buy a quarter inch wheel or a half inch wheel. You bought a whole 1 inch wheel. Use the whole damn wheel. Now, some people will say, but man, if you do that, you're going to generate more heat. And you will generate more heat, but you will not generate higher temperatures. And the reason is because there's a cutting portion of the wheel and a finishing portion of the wheel. And basically all you're doing is just saying, hey, we're going to have more of the wheel do the cutting, less of the wheel do the finishing. We're going to get a worse surface finish. But remember, this is rough grinding, not finished grinding. We will clean that up later. And then you'll say, well, you'll get a bigger risk of chatter. And that maybe is true, maybe is not true, depending. There's kind of arguments both ways, and it can go both ways. Has to do with the arc of cut and the arc length and stuff like that. But if you need to, then take a smaller depth of cut or a slower feed rate or whatever, but still use the entire wheel. And I preach this, and most of the books will say, hey, for rough grinding, use an overlap ratio of 2 or 4, half the wheel, quarter of the wheel. But if you look at the textbooks in grinding, going back from 1914 by a guy named Alden, 1918 others, they say the same thing. Use the whole damn wheel. That's why you got it. And so that's what I preach. It was true in 1914 and 1918. It's true now. And just do it. And then if you find that your motor power can't handle it, which occasionally happens, not very often, or if you find you start to get chatter, slow down the feed rate a little bit. Take a lower feed rate, maybe a smaller depth of cut. That could give you a bigger risk of chatter, a smaller depth of cut, maybe a slower feed rate. But you still got the benefit of using half or using the whole wheel. And I've had customers do this, just get their cycle times down drastically with no side effects, no bad side effects. Just use the whole damn wheel. And if there is a side effect, which happens occasionally but not very often, then decrease your feed rate or your depth of cut. Don't decrease your cross feed.
And is this specifically for rough grinding?
Yes, only for rough. For finish, go back and have an overlook. Go back and use only a quarter or an eighth, the 16th of the wheel. That'll give you a better surface finish. Do it only for roughing.
All right. So I also like to tie Lafayette in whenever I can. I know it's selfish, but we have a very nice little Chevalier 618, and we use 6 inch diameter by half-inch wheels. Would you suggest the same, or because it's such a smaller machine, don't do that?
No, this is a fundamental concept that is just based on first principles. So it works on any machine. I've run a couple of Chevalier grinders. Sometimes they're not as stiff as I would like them to be, so that can be a factor. But then again, the solution is not to not cross over as much as you want, as much as you should in rough grinding crossover. And then if you have to decrease something else, to cope with any lack of stiffness issues, then that's what you should do. So this applies to a lot of things, almost everything, really, based on first principles. It applies to cylindrical traverse grinding, surface grinding, other funky grinding operations that you don't see very often, where you have a cross feed, not this direction, but this direction, going in the same axis as the wheel. And we just want to use the whole damn wheel. Now it can get a little more complicated because eventually you get a taper on the wheel if you grind long
Correct.
enough.
Yes.
And if you do single doink grinding, and single doink grinding is this, you go, well, let's do it like single doink grinding is this. Doink, doink, doink.
Right. No crossfeed.
And then, well, hold on. No, single doink is you feed on one side. Okay. And then
Okay.
double doink, well, I may have mixed that up. So let's take one step at a time. Double doink is doink, 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 doink. You're feeding on both sides. Single doink is you're feeding on one side. Doink, doink, doink. Now, if we throw the cross feed into that, or I prefer to do it with cylindrical traverse grinding, let's do it this way. Cylindrical traverse, double doink is doink, 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 doink. And I'm going through this super fast. I know I do it a lot slower in my courses. Single doink is doink, doink. If you do single doink, you'll get a taper on one side of the wheel. Eventually, it takes a little bit of time, especially if you're using super abrasives. Double doink, you'll get a taper on both sides. So your wheel will end up looking either. See that? See if
Not necessarily, but it looks like a thread grinding wheel, like a little belled up edge.
Yeah, that doesn't come out, huh? That's a little too
Oh,
bright.
right there it does. There you go.
There's a double doink,
Okay.
and there's a single doink.
Yep.
That's the taper that develops. So, again, whenever I teach my courses, I don't like to tell people what to do. I like to explain the fundamental concepts to them, and then have them decide what to do. And then, psychology, if it's your own idea, you're more likely to use it and think it's great because you came up with it yourself.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I don't know where I may have gotten sidetracked on your original question, but this applies to just about anything where there's a cross feed.
Okay. Well, now I am aware of some of your past videos and some of your releases that you are a big fan of props, and you and I were just talking before the show started. You have found a new little trinket that you'd like to add to your collection.
Yes, I collect historical grinding memorabilia, and grinding in terms of not grinding like coffee, because in English we have the same word for grinding of coffee and grinding of work pieces.
Yep.
And a lot of languages use two different words. So I collect the ones not related to coffee because that's grinding little bits and pieces, but grinding of smoothing, rectifying. So I have a bunch of historic paintings where there's like a little knife grinder grinding something. A lot of historic stuff, like during the Renaissance, they had pictures of angels, cherubs, sharpening arrows, Cupid's arrows, and stuff like that. Farmers would have an old grinding wheel, pedal
Yeah.
powered, foot powered. So I was in South Carolina. I came back just 2 days ago, and I was in a junk store. And this was my find.
Oh
Right.
my.
And so there it is. Now this, I think we're pretty sure, is not a millstone. That's a different animal.
Yeah.
This is a proper grinding stone. There's still a little chunk of wood here. I think they chopped it off, but there's a chunk of wood there from the original spindle hub. And there it is. And so there's some farmer back in 1880 or in South Carolina or whatever it was, rotate this thing and sharpen his farm instruments, sharpen his knives for the kitchen, whatever he had going. And so that is my latest find. It was not easy to get into the suitcase and into my luggage, but we got it here. And there it is.
Oh man. So to move a little bit away from conventional grinding, you and I talked a little bit about this the other day in a refresher call, but In the magazine this month, Cutting Tool Engineering magazine, I have an article about grinding that is very unconventional now that I've left that shop. But when I was working for that shop, that was all I ever knew. And when I came out of that little shop and came into the big industrial world, almost nobody grinds on aluminum, mostly because of the terror stories you hear of loading up a wheel or having things destroyed. But we did surface grinding on a thermoform. He did a lot of thermoform molds. He still does them. And to get the required surface finish for the plastic to peel off, you had to surface grind it. And we would use the most open compound white wheel we had, it just to have the biggest gullets between the grits. And we, instead of using conventional coolant, we used WD-40, which sounds just god awful. I know. I had prefaced my article with the line of, "Hopefully, I don't summon the ear of the grinding doc," and because I could almost hear you screaming from wherever
No,
wherever you may be in the world. But have you had a lot of experience cutting aluminum on a grinding machine?
no. You brought that up the other day. I thought, oh my God, I'm supposed to be the grinding expert. And that seems like a pretty obvious thing, grinding of aluminum. How do you do it? And I thought, I don't know a damn thing about grinding of aluminum. I've almost never been asked about it, maybe once or twice in some questions in a seminar or something, or after a course. But I have no experience whatsoever grinding of aluminum, and I couldn't tell you a damn thing about it. I'm a little embarrassed to say because I'm supposed to be the expert.
Oh,
Um, I would imagine it's nasty and gummy and loads like hell, which is what you just said.
well, so we found a workaround. The WD-40 creates a film of a barrier between the grit and the aluminum that uh, it allows the chip to freely fly out of the wheel. So you don't actually even load up the wheel at all. The aluminum chips, do you still call them chips? Yeah, the chips still fly right off the part, right into the backer plate on the side of the machine. It is an oily mess, and we have devoted that machine just to aluminum grinding. But I can imagine that if you went and sparked on something ferrous right after, it would be a fire hazard. Uh, but we found that it works perfectly. That leaves no problems on the surface of the material. It comes right out of the wheel with one or two runs of the dressing diamond. You have a brand new edge, and so we've had well, him at New Penn has had phenomenal success surface grinding aluminum. We're using WD-40 instead of liquid or like a water-based coolant.
That's fabulous. And that's no regular coolant at all, just WD-40 sprayed
Just
on
WD.
intermittently, I assume, right?
So we've only ever done flat surfaces on this. So after every complete pass across the plate, a new coat.
Okay. And you're
But
using cross feed. Is it a wide plate where you're going da 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 da?
yeah, so
Or
it's eight and some inches long by 6 inches wide.
okay, so you're using cross feed on that. So
Yep.
every time you do a new pass, you coat it with WD-40. I guess coat the workpiece.
Yes, the workpiece. Yep.
You know, one of the things I say when I give my courses is, and Stephen Malkin said the same thing to me years ago. If it works, it works. And
Right.
even if you don't know why it works. Now, my job, I try to figure out why things work, because then, if something else comes up that's sort of similar but not, it's good to say, okay, it'll work in this situation and not work in this because of the why. But if it worked, it worked. And now my brain is spinning trying to figure out aluminum, the chemical reactions that could occur between aluminum oxide grit or silicon carbide. Which one do you use? Do you remember?
Alox, just white wheel
Yeah, that's
aluminum.
right, because you said it was white alumina. So are there chemical reactions that occur between aluminum, the metal, and
Yes.
aluminum oxide of the abrasive? And the short answer is I don't know. As soon as we get off this call, I'm probably going to start going through my grinding grit handbooks to figure that out, because it's a good question. So I mean, your point that it loads, that all soft materials load pretty quickly, but
Yes.
that's good. So that's a new one to me, man. I learned something today, so thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. So you had you've done the job of segueing for me. Let's talk about this high intensity grinding course that you offer. Um, I have all the questions in the world. How did you find it was such a success? What gave you the idea to offer it? And what kind of feedback do you get from your clients?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I did my PhD, and then I worked for a few companies in a couple different places for several years. And then in 2004, I guess it was, I left my job at the company and then went out on my own as the grinding doc with no real plan. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Didn't make much money that first year, but gradually built up the business. And I went to companies and I helped them solve problems and I educated them on grinding. And if they had a burn problem, I would fix it. If they had a chatter problem, I would try to fix it. Chatter is a nasty one. Burn, I could almost always fix. Chatter, a different story. Other issues, cycle times. And then in 2007, 2008, maybe, I said, I ought to just start doing courses because it's the old teach a man to fish, buy him a fish, give him a fishing pole. What's the old,
Give a man a fish, you'll feed him for a day. You teach him to fish, you'll feed him for a lifetime.
you pulled it out quicker than I could. Yes. So I figured, let's teach people to fish. Let's teach people to grind so they can do this stuff. And most of the textbooks, maybe all of the textbooks actually, all the textbooks on grinding, they're painfully academic. You open up these things and you're going to get differential equations and charts and, charts in the imaginary complex plane and formulas that are just too damn complicated. And so I said, let's just start teaching grinding to the average Joe who's a smart guy, but
Yeah.
he doesn't want to wade through these damn formulas. And these formulas are, they have their limits too. So I just started doing the course. I thought of the high intensity grinding course. I didn't even like that name when I came up with it, but I couldn't come up with anything better. So that's that. And it's still there practically 20 years later. And I've been doing it for, 18 years, I guess it would be 19 years. And basically people come in and I teach them grinding for 3 days. And I teach them grinding, cooling, dressing, burn, chatter, all the things connected to grinding, choosing a wheel,
Yep.
choosing the grade of a wheel, choosing the grit size, common mistakes people make, stuff like that. And I try to teach it from first principles because grinding, there are so many different weird ass geometries, weird ass being the technical term. There's just so many variations that I go into a new grinding operation. I'm like, okay, I've never seen this before. This is a weird geometry. Give me an hour or two to get my head around it so I can figure it out. But if you understand things from first principles, you can say, okay, no one has ever done this particular geometry before, but that's not a big deal. We'll figure it out based on first principles. And so I've been teaching that. Doing that course for years. It's open to anybody. Basically, at the beginning, I rented out a hotel room and then just said, hey, if you want to come hear me talk about grinding, pay the fee, show up. We'll go out to dinner the first night. You'll get the book of grinding, my the training material. And then I stopped doing them at hotels typically because the hotels would just charge you an arm and a leg for coffee and everything. And I had companies host it. So the company would say, all right, you can do it. You can use our facilities. And, they get a little publicity because it's in their facilities. I'm very strict to say, listen, man, this is not a promotional course. Because if you take the main course at that big grinding wheel company, I won't say any names, but my customers all tell me, yeah, I went to that and I learned about grinding a little bit, but they also spent a long time just telling me how great their products were and how great their wheels were.
Ah,
Use our wheels and that. And so I got nothing to sell you. I just sell you grinding knowledge. So I tell the host company, I go, listen, you don't get any time to promote your products. This is a non-promotional course, not a non-denominational course. No, a non-promotional course
yeah.
where you don't get it in there. It's like, hey, we're cool with that. They get to send 2 people for free. And basically, I just talk grinding for 3 straight days. So that's been a big success. The feedback I get from customers is I'm always very honest. I'm a terrible salesman. It's a spectrum. There are like 5% of the people who go out and change the world and save millions of dollars to their company and go, oh my God, this changed my life. There's 10% who make a hell of a lot of progress, who like do great things like, wow, we save hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're doing better whenever we have a new situation. Um, we now have some scientific methods to apply instead of just trial and error. Then you've got probably like 50% who just make steady progress and do well. And then you got maybe 10% who make some progress, and then 5% who make no progress and don't do a damn thing and might think things worse. So, what's going to happen. It's going to want to be there because their boss sent them. So, that's the spectrum. And I like the guys who are on the right who make good progress or a hell of a lot of progress. But that's pretty much that's the feedback I get after the course.
Yeah. So you had made mention of how grinding textbooks are, what was your word, terribly academic?
Painfully academic? I don't know.
Emily,
Oh.
so you have a couple posts, I've only seen them on LinkedIn, about the Great Malkin papers. And you told me the other day that you were in the process of translating them from painfully academic to standard English.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want that sounds like an insult to Malkin, and it's not because some of these things have to be painfully academic. But yes, I a lot of my work, or let's say half of my work, when I do my grinding course, about half of the stuff you get is things that I've seen on the shop floor because I've spent years of my life just camped out on the shop floor, sitting by grinding machines, just trying stuff. Sticking on a new wheel, see what happens, measuring wheel wear, changing parameters and measuring wheel wear again, measuring grinding power or current, which is very useful.
Yeah.
And just, succeeding, failing, screwing up, making things better, making things worse, but, gradually, hopefully making things better, fixing problems. That's kind of half of what I teach. And the other
Yeah.
half of what I teach is taking academic articles from these academic journals, which are very good, and then locking myself in the basement for a week and saying, okay, I'm going to take this, I'm going to reprocess it. I'm going to take all their data, I'm going to reprocess it and stuff that average Joe, smart guy, but not, didn't take differential equations, can understand, and just make that available. So, okay, how do we make this practical for your average Joe in the grinding world? And so that's kind of half of the course too, taking the academic world. So that's the long way to getting around to Stephen Malkin. Stephen Malkin was the world grinding guru. And he first published stuff in about 1968, 69, and passed away, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so. And he was went to MIT, genius guy. I mean, the stuff he did was just fabulous. So in my opinion, he's the smartest grinder that ever existed. I mean, the guy just knew his stuff. And the best thing about Malkin is he understood grinding from first principles. He didn't just say, hey, we did a bunch of tests and here are the results. He said, hey, we did a bunch of tests. Here are the results. Now let's try to figure out the fundamental science of what's going on. And so a couple months ago, I have a guy who does video development for me, and I didn't have any material for him that month. So I said, all right, let's get some material and let's do a series of the Great Malkin papers. So I took every paper one by one. I think there's something like 10 episodes.
Yes.
And I said, all right, let's walk through each paper and let's explain what he did starting in 1968 when he did his PhD at MIT and his fabulous measurements, which we still know today, we're still aware of today. Let's walk through what he did, and then let's walk through why his approach to that information was unique. And then we'll walk through why I still use that when I teach my courses. I say, hey, here's what Malkin did. So those are on YouTube, and I did 10 of them, and I just walked through each one by one over the course of 30 or 40 years to say, here's what each paper found. I'll simplify some of the more complicated stuff, but I still go to the original paper. And I just go, here's what he did, and here's why it's still useful for us today. So that was kind of my ode of of respect to the great Stephen Malkin. And those are out there now. And every couple months, I'll send it to my mailing list saying, "Hey, we're releasing a new one," even though they're all officially out there on YouTube. But we have an official release every couple months of a new great Malkin paper.
So your book of grinding that you offer with your course is, and we had talked about this very very slightly the other day. Do you find that Dr. Malkin's papers complement the book of grinding in that there are things that you don't cover or haven't covered that he does?
What I do in my book of grinding is I take Malkin's work and then I reprocess it in a fun, cutesy way with like colors and cartoons and jokes. And if you look at my book, we got Joe the grinder and Bud the button pusher, and they're always disagreeing. So a lot of the book of grinding, or some fraction of it, is taking Malkin's stuff and just putting it into a more colorful, funny way to make it, more accessible. Now, is there stuff in those papers that I don't include in the book of grinding? Sure, for sure. There's a lot because he takes it to a pretty advanced level. And I would say that's step two. So, once you learn grinding to a certain level, good. If you want to start digging into the Malkin papers, go ahead and do that. It's but that's kind of a step 2 or 3 when you're taking it to a higher academic scientific level. So, the other researchers at companies or universities, I say, all right, you've taken my course, good, you've got the basics. Now, if you want to start digging deeper, here are the Malkin papers. Here's the way to do it. And that's, like I had a company in Italy last year, and I said, okay, I brought you to this level. I can't get you any higher. You guys are pretty damn smart. You guys are on the ball. Here are the Malkin papers now that, if you want to take it to the next level. And this was for temperature predictions when Malkin did a lot of work in the 70s and 80s on predicting workpiece temperature. So I hope that answered your question. I kind of
It
forgot
does.
what the question was.
No, it absolutely does. And you're grinding the book of grinding. I hear it's 4,000 pages now.
In total, yeah. I mean, we don't go through
Wow.
all 4,000. It's 4,000 electronic pages,
Okay.
and it's not like a proper book. It's kind of in a quasi PowerPoint, quasi book. So I take PowerPoint slides that I use in my course, and then in the book, there's a description below each slide. So some of it's repetitive. I'll take a really good picture, and then I'll talk about it. Page 3,412. I talk about it 3,413. We show the same picture, and I talk about it some more. 3,415. I circle this and I talk about it some more. So it's 4,000 pages, but it's not that overwhelming. And then probably half of it is stuff that I don't cover in the regular course. This is like only if you're doing this particular specific type of grinding, or if you're grinding this funky workpiece will you get into this section. But yeah, right now it's 4,000 pages. It's kind of my life's work. That's why I'm protective of it. That's why I don't give it away.
Yeah.
And it's basically the best education, I'm humbly state, the best education there is in grinding, either through my course or you can purchase it independently. It ain't cheap, but you can purchase it independently.
Okay. So now I just had a question pop up in my head now is would you liken it to, say, the machinery's handbook or the machinery's Bible, in that there's a lot of information in there, but if you know what you're looking for, it's more of a reference. Yeah.
I would say it's twofold. There is fundamental education in there. That's half of it, which applies to almost all grinding operations. And that's what I teach in the book of grinding. And then half of it is reference to say, all right, next week we're going to grind cermets. And what the hell is a cermet? It's kind of like tungsten carbide, but not really. It's kind of like ceramic, but not really. And instead of you repeating all the mistakes of the people before you, because this happens all the time, they go, oh, we got to grind cermets. Let's just grind it the same way we grind tungsten carbide and see what happens. Oh, that didn't work. Well, let's grind it with a little different parameters. Oh, that worked a little bit better. Well, let's do this. Well, that seems to work a little bit. Well, let's try this. No, that made things worse. And then they finally arrive at something that works. In
Yeah.
the book of grinding, I just say, hey, man, here's sermons. Here's what other people have done. Here's what the academic stuff says. Here's your starting point. Don't start the same way you're grinding carbide. Start here with this type of wheel, this type of grit type, this type of grit size, these parameters. Now, once you start there, if you want to play around a little bit because of your own peculiarities of your machine, that's fine. But that's a starting point. So that's kind of a reference to say, don't reinvent the wheel, man. Just, take what other people have done. And the nice thing about the book is you don't have to go digging to see what other people done. You don't have to ask AI and get some weird ass answer that's, well, that's not true. It'll pretty much tell you immediately. It'll do your homework for you. So in that respect, it's kind of similar to the reference manual. Probably the difference is a lot of the machining handbooks can give you starting machining parameters.
Yes.
Grinding, yeah, it's just not easy to do it. We can give you a starting what's called a Q prime, but beyond that, there are just too many variables where no one yet, maybe someday it'll happen, nobody yet has been able to say, okay, you're grinding this material, start with this depth of cut, this feed rate, this wheel speed, boom, do it now and you'll be fine. That has not happened yet for grinding.
And grinding is a strange animal, not to quote a 1980s song, but there you could change one tiny parameter and it could all go belly up. Um,
Oh, for sure.
as I get so to give you a little backstory, is a professor I work with here. His tenure research was in wear principles of metals, and he had me attempt is the only word I can use. Attempt to surface grind titanium, and I don't know what happened. No matter what I changed, no matter what I did, it was wavy. That you could look and see the surface was wavy, as if the material was melting under the grinding wheel. And we changed wheels, we changed all sorts of things. I could not get a decent surface finish. And so, just a shameless question from myself: have you ever covered grinding of titanium?
Sure. Titanium is one of the aerospace materials, kind of like nickel alloys. So that's pretty common. It's a gummy material. It loads the wheel quickly. It's
Yes.
softer. It's kind of nasty. It has some chemical reactions that are unpleasant. So yeah, I mean, that's a part of my work is going to companies in the aerospace industry. And then, they grind nickel alloys, they grind titaniums. Then how do you cope with that? How do you cope with the loading of the wheel? How do you cope with the nasty chemical reactions that are going on between the grit and the workpiece in aerospace materials? Um, and like with your aluminum, you said you found that when grinding aluminum, you use white aluminum oxide,
Yes.
and that's immediately what I would have thought. Okay, yes, you need to do that. It's the same with grinding of aerospace materials because white is the most friable one, which means it breaks easy.
Yes.
So before those grits get loaded with aluminum or titanium or nickel, we basically, before they get too loaded, they're always going to load a little bit before they get too loaded. We have the grit fracture. The grit breaks, and white alumina is the most friable, meaning less tough. So it breaks away. So titanium would be similar um, to dealing with that. We don't want the wheel to load. We want a softer bond material and all of that type of stuff. So yeah, that's basic stuff, and people often reinvent the wheel, And I had someone call me up a couple months ago and say, "Hey, man, we're doing cylindrical OD grinding of was it some kind of tool steel? I think it was." And they said, the wheel manufacturer recommended a white alumina H grade wheel, and I just go, no, no, wrong, no. Oh, and it had a thread form in it too. So you've got a thread form, and they go, well, how do you know this is true? And I go, well, let's go back to 1914 when Alden wrote his book, and he said, hey, here's what you do for thread forms, and here's the wheel grade you should use for different operations. And cylindrical OD grinding has a short arc length, which means the grit penetration depth is bigger, which means you need a harder wheel, not a softer wheel. And now you've got a thread form, and you got to hold the bottom of that form, which means you need a harder wheel. Um, and so the answer is not a super soft grade. Maybe it was. No, it wasn't a high speed steel. Then it was just regular, some kind of 52-100 steel. And I said, no, just that's a bad starting point. You can do it. You're just going to consume a hell of a lot of your wheel and have to keep dressing and have take forever.
Yeah.
So, this is basic first principles is no, don't use a white alumina soft grit. Use a harder grade and maybe a pink alumina or, a monocrystalline or a mixture or something. So there we go. I just started. I can't remember your original question now. I got off
I,
on many tangents there, and I don't
that's
remember where we
okay.
started.
I was curious as if you cover the grinding of titanium in
Yes,
that I had such a nightmare cutting it.
yes, 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 yes.
So to kind of just piggyback that and sort of land the plane is if somebody has problems, if they have a question that they want to ask you, what is the best way or how can they reach you, the grinding doc?
So if they have a question they want to do in the magazine Cutting Tool Engineering, we have the Ask the Grinding Doc column,
Yep.
which we've been doing since 2000, I believe, or 2001, because that's when I was working in Sweden, and that's I proposed it to the editor, and he goes, "Yeah, man, let's do the grinding doc." Um, so that's what 26 years now. I can't
Yeah,
believe it.
25
Wow,
years.
time flies. They can send a question to whoever, the editor or whoever at Cutting Tool Engineering. They can send the question direct to me. But then the question, it's going to come out, if it's a good question, it's going to come out in the magazine. And then you got to wait for me to cover it in the magazine. But, that's a possibility. If you just have a quick question, they can email it to me, go to the webpage, thegrindingdoc.com, and just send an email there. If you're just looking for free advice, as some people are, sometimes I get these rude emails going, "Hey, man, we got this problem. What do we do?" That kind of annoys me. I'm like, this is how I pay the bills, buddy. I spent a lot of time developing this. Have you attended any of my courses? Have you thought about bringing me in? They go, "No, man, just tell us what to do."
Oh,
So, I'm less likely to respond, although sometimes I will if it's an interesting situation.
right.
So those are the ways they can get there. Those are the ways they can do it, either through the magazine or get in contact with me.
So to kind of help you there, I included a direct link to your website in the video description. So any of you watching or listening, and you need to find the doc, the link in the video description is a direct way there. So
We're doing a course in. There's still time. It's only about a week and a half away now, but we're doing a course in Toledo, Ohio, in a week and a half. And then I've got one scheduled for Sweden in December. And then we might do one in Poland. I got a call with some guys in Poland. We might do one in Poland. So we try to do them in fun locations too. The last one was in Switzerland. That was kind of cool.
oh my goodness, that's a beautiful
Once
area.
once we did a course in Vegas. We've done them in New York City, Chicago, Stockholm, Paris. So we try to do them in fun locations. Although typically we get less of a turnout if we do it in Vegas or Paris than if we do it in Toledo, Ohio. Just
Right.
because I think bosses don't want to send their machine operators to Vegas for a course. They think they'll never show up. So
Uh, you kind of beat me to my last point was a shameless plug for your next courses. But you said Toledo is in a week and a half.
yeah, April 10th, 11th, 12th, something like that. Yeah,
Oh, that's next weekend.
I think so. It's coming up quick. Yeah,
So you and I, so that's just the stars aligned. You and I will actually both be in Ohio at the same time. I'm joining my race team to go to Mid Ohio Sports Car Complex in Lexington.
nice. Your race
We're
team. What are you
doing.
racing?
So you ever hear 24 hours of lemons?
Oh,
It's crap can. So the car has a budget limit of $500.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly the reaction I get from people whenever I tell them about it. But and the judges, they call themselves perpetrators, and they hate the amount of money that's in professional racing. So they limit the car to $500, and if you spent more than that, you can BS them with either a bribe or you can tell them a terrible story, and they'll usually forget that you've overspent and or tell you, okay, I'm bored, leave.
So wait, what's I'm gonna look this up. What's the type? What's it called?
24 hours of lemons. It's a pun on Le Mans.
Okay. Okay.
And so the crappier the car, the better you do.
So are people pulling out Pintos and
So there's old,
scooping up their
yes.
Pintos?
So you familiar with? I was just talking to my father-in-law about this over the weekend. You ever hear of a French car company, Citroen?
Mhm.
So I forget what year it was. I think it was right before the Second World War. But the car still had the crank on the front to get the starter to go.
Oh my God. Okay.
And the judges worshiped that car. I mean, when that went into BS inspection, they didn't even ask for any kind of explanation. They said, "Yep,
Oh
pole
yeah.
position." And as a joke, whenever it drove by, or if mostly being pushed by the garage, um, the judges would follow it and bow to it and worship the ground it was driving on. It's very funny. So the videos are all over YouTube of the wrap ups for each race. And sadly, Pittsburgh International closed at the beginning of this year. That was our stomping ground, and that was the one we always went to. And but because of that, they reopened Mid Ohio, and it's a beautiful course. We're looking forward to going there. I'm actually leaving Thursday after I get out of my class on Thursday morning, and meeting the team and going. But I mean, they have some terrible cars. PT Cruisers and HHRs are usually highly regarded.
I am going from Toledo to another company visit, and I have like 4 days to kill between the two. Where in Ohio is this, and what dates?
Lexington, and it is the week. It is this coming weekend. It's the Friday through Sunday.
This coming weekend. Okay, no, that'll. I
Yeah,
need the next weekend. Okay, I will check this out then.
and they do sell spectator tickets. So if you buy it, it's dirt cheap. You can walk in. You can go anywhere but the pit and paddock. You can walk right up to the track and watch people drive by or slide by. It's the rate of attrition is abhorrent, and it is so fun to watch.
All right, sounds cool. Sounds
Uh,
good.
so to wrap up the day, I want to take a minute and on behalf of Cutting Tool Engineering Magazine and Lafayette Engineering, Doc, thank you very much for your time, for coming on the show and talking shop with us. So next week is a little bit of an off week. As I've explained, I'll be traveling. So next week's show will be a little bit off on time. I'll release the time for the next show, but we have Kellenberger Grinder coming on. So another big titan of the industry. So like I said, next week I'll release the time, but it won't be the standard 8 o'clock. But I want to take a minute again to thank Lafayette College and Lafayette Engineering for giving me a place to broadcast. So if you or someone you know has a high schooler looking for an engineering curriculum that's going to put them ahead of the pack, we ask you to say our namesake's rallying cry, Cur Non, or why not, and join us here at Lafayette Engineering. Doc, once again, thank you very much. Thank you.